Hello and welcome to another episode of God-Sized Stories. I'm very blessed. I have Mark with us today. Mark, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm in my early 40s. I'm an Aries, in case you want to know. I am a licensed clinical professional counselor at Whitestone Counseling Resources. I see adults, I see teenagers, I see couples. I've been there for a little bit over 2 years. I live in the Lake County area. I have a wife and an almost 5-year-old. He's 4 3/4, as he likes to say. I enjoy running, as you can see by my body. I don't do enough of it, but I do enjoy it. I enjoy reading and just spending time with my family. You know, I work some crazy hours due to my schedule and due to when I see clients. So the time that we get to spend together is really important. Mm-hmm. So I value that time, and that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah. Well, I've been very blessed to get to know you and become friends with you. We do both go to church together, but that wasn't our initial contact. Our initial contact was, as you referenced, your son was in my preschool class last year. And then getting to connect to you and your wife over that has been really special. But then to have that then transition to be not just your son's teacher anymore, but now friends.
Yes. Now we can really level up our friendship.
Exactly.
And then that dual relationship isn't in the picture anymore.
Exactly. And then on top of it, another passion for both of us that you have not referenced yet is our love of wrestling.
Yes.
And watching and attending wrestling.
Yes. Professional wrestling.
Professional. Yes. Not that silly Olympic style.
No. Yes. It's you know, I get captured by the story. You know, I think the story is what really drives it for me. You know, certainly the athleticism, the creativity that goes into all of that. And it's entertainment for me. Some people conceive of it as kind of silly or fake or, you know, scripted or whatever. And yeah, a lot of entertainment that we seek is fake and scripted. But you know, these people are telling stories using their bodies, also giving to each other sacrificially. There's a lot of trust involved with that. So I think it really is a good microcosm of life in general, and you know, and what thriving looks like. You know, when two people are giving of each other, it really means a lot to them, and that shows up, you know, in the best stories that we see through that.
Awesome. Now, I'm sure we both could happily sit and talk for hours and have this be a podcast about wrestling.
And we may even start one. This could serve as a catalyst for something like that.
But in fact, we are here to talk about not just our relationship with each other, but our relationships with God. And I've been blessed to hear some of your story and some of your testimony. And we're going to get into a little bit of that today. So don't worry, audience that doesn't enjoy wrestling. We'll pause the wrestling here and get into your life and rewind a little bit about like, as you were telling me, like God's been working on it your entire life, and you've been on this incredible journey with Him, and you've been blessed in many ways. So I'm going to let you start with wherever you would like to start with that journey.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So I grew up on the North Shore of Chicago. I'm the youngest of 4. My parents always believed in the value of religion, you know, specifically the Christian religion. In practice, that looked like us going to a kind of a mainline denominational church every Sunday. My parents were very involved in kind of the volunteer side of things. My mom kind of led women's discipleship or women's fellowship. My dad was president of the church council. And help them find pastors on a couple of different occasions. So it was very much modeled in the home for us, but it kind of stopped on Sundays. We didn't really kind of talk about our faith or look for opportunities to like let our faith influence our relationships or our work or our daily rhythms of life, as it were. So it kind of stopped on Sunday. Actually, it's funny. I went through the confirmation process in 7th or 8th grade, and the church pastor at the time used Star Trek to teach us lessons in the Bible. There's
Awesome.
another use of story, as it were, creatively, in the sense that Star Trek often used science fiction as a backdrop to talk about morality, talk about things like race relations, talk about things like religion, sexuality, things like that. It was one of the ways that he used to kind of reach us as 7th or 8th graders. And that love also stuck with me. So maybe this will be a Star Trek wrestling mashup or something like that. Stay tuned. But, I went through the confirmation process as a 7th or 8th grader. And at the time, my parents had told each of us, like, hey, we really want you to go through the confirmation process, but then what you do with this thing after that is kind of up to you. Like many kids that age or young people that age, whenever you make someone do something and then you relax that requirement, oftentimes they fall away from it. And so I kind of stopped going to church. I don't know that I ever stopped believing in God necessarily, but I stopped going to church and kind of focused on other things moving into adolescence. And, again, it was the kind of thing where, like, we were kind of talking before you push play, how, when God leaves the building, oftentimes a lot of the blessings of God also leave the building. I think about, like, in Ezekiel, when the glory of the Lord departs from the temple. Like, when God leaves the building, it's only a matter of time before the foundation starts to crumble. So, there were some patterns of sin that had started in my life around that time. And started to kind of slowly take root in my life, though there were no outward signs of, that I was struggling with anything in general. There were some things that were going on in secret that I wasn't necessarily proud of, and didn't really feel comfortable sharing. I think one component of my experience growing up was that I was kind of a little more introverted, you could say. Like, I wasn't necessarily the one to raise my hand if, and I was generally like a good kid, by all, external appearances, respected authority, stayed out of trouble, did well in school, that kind of thing. Discovered radio in high school. I did 4 years of radio. Our high school had a radio station and a TV station, and I did the radio side. That was really helpful for me in terms of kind of breaking out of that introverted shell. Went to college for a year. Wasn't necessarily the best experience I'd had. I think I missed home a little bit and kind of didn't really find my way very well. Didn't really know what I was looking for. I think that was another component. Like, when God's in my life, I feel a sense of direction and a sense of purpose, knowing that I'm connected to something bigger than myself, knowing that I'm part of something He's doing in the universe and in me and through me as well. Like, I'm changing, and hopefully I'm changing the world and helping Him bring His kingdom here, But that was all kind of missing in my...
Right. So God was probably still at an arm's length.
Yes. I mean, as I said, I never really stopped believing in Him, but, it wasn't necessarily something I was like, I wonder what God would think about this, that kind of thing. So, in my early 20s, I decided, I'd stopped going to school and I was working full time. Then I decided, hey, I don't want to forsake a college education. So I went back to school, graduated. I started dating a girl kind of long distance, and again, there was not a lot of depth to my personality or experience or whatever, and the patterns of sin that had started in my early teens that kind of persisted throughout this period of time. We ended up getting married in the mid 2000s. After buying a house together and kind of starting a life together. Again, not a lot of depth or texture to our relationship. And, distance was kind of creeping between the two of us that I don't think either one of us realized at the time. But then in the fall of 2009, became clear that we weren't necessarily on the same page, and some stuff had started to happen that was not okay. So it was at that point, that specific time, that somehow, some way, and it was probably 99.9% God and 0.1% me, if I can claim any responsibility at all, that, he started showing up in my life again, as I would probably phrase it that way. I had started to lose a lot of weight, and, had some health issues as a result of the stress of kind of our marriage imploding, and went to a doctor and kind of shared with him that I had started looking up Bible verses for love and marriage or whatever. And he started witnessing to me right there in the doctor's office.
Awesome.
And he was telling me told me I was loved, told me I was a child of God, told me that, God was faithful, and he wouldn't leave me or forsake me. And that he could be trusted in this situation. And I was like, wow, this doesn't happen every day at a doctor's office that I've been to, or that I've experienced. Another thing that kind of showed up in my life at that point was counseling. I started going to a counselor to kind of process the feelings, process the grief, get support for kind of, what was going on in my marriage. And it's funny, looking back on it now, I haven't kind of necessarily kind of connect those dots in that moment, until just now. So thank you for letting me do that.
Sweet.
Yes. So I ended up moving back here. We were living in Cincinnati, a suburb of Cincinnati, Ohio at the time. I ended up moving back here. And that was really where my kind of relationship with the Lord really took off.
About when was this? About what year?
This was 2010.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just turned 30. I just gotten divorced, which is really unique, I would say, for someone that age to have already experienced a divorce, and really, really broken, in a place of brokenness, and really looking for something good to put in my life, kind of in the vacuum that, this divorce had created. It's funny, I went, the first Sunday I moved back here, I went back to the church that I'd gone to growing up.
Oh.
And I was the youngest person there by 30 years. And my mom was like, maybe this church isn't a good fit for you, but I know this church around the corner. This is a very well-known, very successful at the time, non-denominational church, evangelical church, that had one of their campuses not far from where my parents lived. And she was like, I've heard good things about this place. You might want to check this. This might have a little more of what you're looking for. And one of the things they had, again, this kind of ties into the counseling and support side of things, was the divorce recovery group. And that was a very, very, very huge support for me in those early days of just coming and being broken, and being around other people who are broken, and supporting each other and learning and growing. That was a very, very foundational and very supportive environment for me. It also happened to be a great place, the church, to kind of learn and grow in my faith, and that's what I did. I started getting involved and serving, and just kind of making coffee, on Sunday mornings, and greeting at the doors and that kind of thing. And, really just growing in my faith and trying to learn all I could about this new faith that I'd rediscovered, and this God who had been there all this time, who I had kind of put on the back burner for, various points of my life. Really getting into the Bible. I didn't have a job, so that meant I had plenty of time to study the Bible, which was great. And, looking back on it, it took me a few months to find a job. And I still to this day believe that if I'd moved back and found a job within 2 weeks, my faith would not have grown to the level that it did. And I think another thing that, I think about is that early on, that those steps and my faith level, I really saw exploding. The growth these days seems to be much more incremental, in the sense that, there are hills and there are valleys in our life. And, I think that a lot of our time is spent in the valleys, not necessarily that valley is a low place. It's just not necessarily the high place at the mountaintop, For instance, I got baptized in the summer of 2010 in Lake Michigan. That was a really cool experience. And then, really just kind of started to get down to the nitty gritty of this faith, and kind of what does it mean to be a Christ follower, disciple. And a lot of that means, serving and not being served, being the first to, opens a door for someone or make coffee or whatever, Around that time, I also started to get involved with the young adult ministry at our church. And, after about 6 months, found myself in a position of leading the young adult ministry. And it's funny how that happens, and, just really needing God more, I think, somewhere I heard that, like, as we grow in our faith, we understand that our need for God grows more,
Yes. That gap continues.
Yes. It's like we become more aware of that gap, and just how big that gap is, know. And in that moment, I really felt like, okay, you're going to have to help me through this, God. And there were godly, wise young adults around me who had done campus ministry, who had, had worked at churches and all that kind of stuff that kind of tapped their shoulders to help me do this thing. It was kind of around that time too that I discovered, okay, I kind of like working with people. I kind of moved back here and found a job in a corporate environment. And within about 6 months, I realized corporate work may not be for me anymore. I know it does a lot of great things for a lot of people. Yep. I'm not slamming it in any way, but I don't know. There was something that happened. There were two things that happened right around that time that kind of influenced me to maybe start thinking about, doing something else besides corporate work. One was one of the first people I had met at the church I kind of started attending and growing in, suddenly, very, 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 very suddenly passed away. I mean, this was she went upstairs after having coffee with her roommate in the morning and didn't come back down. I mean, just that quickly. And it was around the same time that I heard a very kind of inspiring sermon about kind of living fully alive, And both of those things kind of shook me out of my kind of complacency as it related to my calling and my career, and kind of set me off on a journey to kind of explore, okay, if not corporate work, how can I put food on the table? And, through kind of just getting involved at the church and serving and listening to people and connecting with people and just listening to their stories, just really kind of not necessarily slid into kind of looking back on it. I think that was God, his hand in my life. So many of the things we consider sliding into are actually, God, I think I'm going to do something through you, through this process. So, had come into contact with the folks at Trinity in Bannockburn. Very, very experienced faculty in their counseling program. Very godly, wise people who had done clinical work for. Each of them had done at the time over 20 years worth of clinical work. Sure. Each of them. The people that graduated from there were placed in the field and were doing very well in the field, were prepared and equipped to both, help people and, bring their faith into the conversation as well. So that intrigued me. The idea of kind of doing what I did on Sundays and kind of doing it throughout the week intrigued me. And it was also a leap of faith of, hey, I need to ask my boss to accommodate for taking classes in the middle of the day. And this was 2014, 2015. We're not working from home yet, kind of thing.
Right.
And that was God's favor. That was nothing else but God's favor that worked in my boss's heart to the point where she was like, okay, I guess so, and I was saying, I'm going to take these classes so that I can leave this place, and so whatever God did in her heart, to allow her to say yes, I will never ever understand that. That's just the thumbprint of God.
Absolutely.
In God's favor. Nothing more than that. I was a good worker, but I wasn't lighting the world on fire. So, again, just God's favor. And that led me to kind of be working full time and going to school part time. all through that time, God is showing up. At church, I met a young lady who eventually became my wife. We had a son together. He is awesome. And like all these things, like God has restored and given back to me just solely out of his goodness and out of his love. And, I think our God is definitely a God of second chances. I know Absolutely. Our God is a God of second chances. I wouldn't be talking to you today if he wasn't, and God is in the business of redeeming and renovating and restoring and any other R-E word that you can shake a stick at. He does, he is a miracle working God, and I can't say enough about his goodness and throughout my story. And I'm just so grateful that he didn't leave me, in that pit, of sadness and brokenness. That he gave me a second chance at so many things. And I wouldn't, as I said, I wouldn't be here today if that wasn't the case. So, in my 40s now, I'm rediscovering, kind of the heart of God in terms of God the Father. I truly believe that the love that we have for our children is just a small little taste of the love that God has for us. And the honor that it is to be able to participate in that is just mind-boggling, And as I said, the growth, the spiritual growth happens, much more now in fits and spurts. And, there is a lot of time in the valley. As I said, it's not necessarily like bad time. It's just like, our souls are being sustained in the daily disciplines and the grind. And certainly there will be opportunities to grow our faith through good times and trials and hardships. But, God is the one constant, and, he is bringing this about for his purposes and for his glory, and telling the story through each of our lives. So I'm grateful that, hopefully he's told a good story through mine. So
I would definitely say so. I'm encouraged by it. I'm lifted up by it. I'll ask one final question.
Yeah.
For the sake of the audience, and thinking of your story, like you said, definitely the one thing, our God is a God of second chances, for sure. If there's one other thing that you would want the listeners to really get from your story and what God's done in your life, what do you think it would be?
Yeah, that's a good one. I would say, it's I think one prayer I prayed oftentimes, early when I was kind of rediscovering my faith is like, give me opportunities to share you, today with the people around me. I feel like that's a prayer that God will answer 100% of the times, though not in the way that we would expect. It might be like,
ways.
Hey, that interaction you had with your wife that didn't kind of go the way you hoped. Why don't you go back and kind of own your mistake and apologize and and repent. So I would say it's never a bad day to share your story and share God with people. And that's a prayer I need to pray more consistently. But yeah, God will give you those opportunities, and God will give you the means by which you can make that happen. He's not going to ask you anything to do that he's not going to equip you to do. So.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for sharing so much of your life and so much of your passion with us. I've been, as I said before, I've been blessed to know you and get to know you more and to know your family and spend time with you. Definitely. I agree. Your son's an awesome dude.
Thank you. Thank you.
It was fun to be his teacher. And now it's fun to be your friend.
Yes.
And then have him around when we do other things like share a dinner and see his excitement.
Yes. As we watch wrestling.
As we watch wrestling, of course. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for taking the time. Because as you said, your time is, all of us, our time is very important. It's our most important commodity because we don't get more. We have a finite amount that we don't know. So thank you for spending that with me and sharing your heart with the audience. And audience, thank you so much as always for listening. I couldn't do this without you.
Thank you.